Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a mystery that started with just one single, grainy piece of security footage, but it just blew up into this massive online investigation. And what starts as a simple story about a shadow in the dark, well, it actually reveals a whole lot about our own fears and what might be creeping through our backyards when we're not looking. So imagine this. It's the middle of the night. Your security camera pings, and you see this blurry shade moving out there. What are you really looking at? Is it just your neighbor's cat out for a stroll, or is it something way, way more dangerous? That is the exact question that kicked this whole thing off.
And it all began with this really urgent plea on Reddit. A homeowner in Southeast Louisiana posted the video with this message. You can just feel the anxiety in those words, can't you? See, this wasn't just some fun, hey, what is this animal game? This was about protecting a family. And it just goes to show how fast our own fears can take the driver's seat.
Okay, so let's break down exactly what happened. It's like the perfect setup for a modern-day mystery, you know? A motion-activated camera doing its job, piercing through the darkness of a quiet suburban backyard.
So the footage itself, it is the perfect recipe for suspense. First, you've got these deer just calmly grazing. That's a really key clue we're going to come back to. Then, this feline shape slips into the frame. But here's the real problem, the thing that fuels the whole mystery. The clip just stops, right before we can get a good, clear look. And without that final revealing shot, our brains are left to fill in the blanks. And let me tell you, they often go to the scariest possible place.
So, with the footage posted online, the internet did what the internet does best. It immediately became judge and jury. And of course, within hours, the comments section had split into two very distinct camps, and both sides were absolutely convinced they were right.
On one side, you had Team Mountain Lion. They were pointing at that long tail, the fact that it seemed to be following the deer, and its apparent size. All signs, they said, of a predator. But then you had Team House Cat, and they were arguing that nope, the tail's held all wrong for a cougar, those deer are way too chill, and the size, well, that's just a classic trick of the camera.
So the people screaming cougar were coming from a place of real, immediate concern. Users like this one saw the video and their first thought was caution. Protect the family, protect the pets. And you can't blame them, right? It's a completely understandable gut-level reaction. But then, on the other side of the aisle, you had the skeptics. You had experienced wildlife watchers and enthusiasts like this. And they were focusing on these tiny, but super important behavioral clues. They looked at the way the animal was moving and basically said, nope, that body language, it just doesn't add up for a big predator.
So this all raises a really fascinating question. With the evidence being so blurry, why did so many people immediately leap to the most dangerous conclusion? Turns out, the answer isn't really in the video. It's inside our own heads.
It all boils down to this thing called a negativity bias. It's this ancient survival instinct that we are all hardwired with. Our brains literally evolved to assume the worst-case scenario. And it makes sense, right? Think about it from a survival standpoint. Mistaking a stick for a snake is a free lesson, no big deal. But mistaking a snake for a stick, well, that could be the last mistake you ever make. And this grainy video is the perfect trigger for that ancient alarm bell.
And this user makes such a brilliant point about how our own tech can fool us. Night vision cameras, especially when they're placed low to the ground, can create this effect called forced perspective. An animal that's close to the lens is going to look huge compared to the background, totally messing up its proportions and making a regular house cat look way bigger and more menacing than it actually is.
All right, so if our own eyes and our brains can play tricks on us, how do we ever get to the truth? Well, we have to look past our gut reactions and go to the forensic evidence. Let's dig into how the online sleuths started to crack this thing open with facts.
Okay, so when you actually put the known behaviors side by side, a much clearer picture starts to emerge. A cougar's tail, it stays low, acting like a rudder for balance. Its walk is heavy, powerful. And deer? Oh, they would be on high alert, ready to explode into a sprint. But the animal in this video, it's got a much lighter, nimbler walk. And those deer, they barely even flick an ear. They are totally, completely unbothered.
But with all of this back and forth about the size and the scale and how the deer were acting, it turns out there was one single, almost casual little movement from this animal that provided the most definitive answer of all.
And right there, that was the smoking gun.
Toward the end of the clip, the animal lifts its tail straight up into this high, vertical question mark. Wildlife experts on the thread jumped on this immediately. It's a classic, friendly hello gesture for a domestic house cat. It is not something a mountain lion ever does. And just like that, case closed.
So, the mystery of the shadow cat was solved. But this whole incident, it really points to a bigger, more practical question, doesn't it? What should you do when your camera catches something that you think could be a real threat?
Well, it's important to understand what some experts are now calling the blink camera problem. These home security systems, with their grainy night vision and their short motion-activated clips, they're almost perfectly designed to create confusion and fear. They give us just enough information to make us worry, but rarely enough to give us any certainty. It's a perfect storm for anxiety.
So if this ever happens to you, the experts recommend a really clear 4-step process. First up, document everything. Save that footage, write down the time and the location. Second, check for scale. Try to compare the animal to something fixed in your yard, like a fence post or a specific bush. Third, look for those cues. Analyze its walk, its tail, and especially how other animals are reacting to it. And finally, step 4, if you have credible, repeated sightings, that's when you report it to your local wildlife agency.
So in the end, yeah, the overwhelming verdict was house cat. But the sheer panic this whole thing caused reveals a really fascinating truth. We've built our homes right up against, and sometimes right inside, natural habitats. And our cameras are now pulling back the curtain on this secret world that's been there all along. The whole incident is a powerful reminder that the line between our world and the wild is way thinner than we think, and it leaves you with one final question to chew on. What's really walking through your yard after dark?